Another day closer to the Stanley Cup Playoffs means more intense hockey breakdowns on the Tuesday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And we are diving deep into this New York Rangers team and the success of perhaps one of the most underrated players in the game in Artemi Panarin. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The new music is making me want to kick a freestyle, but you're right back inside the lab for the Tuesday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $100 and $50 in your bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, this new intro has got me all kinds of fired up. We on road. We're getting it done. We got sketchy Wi-Fi, but we're still here bringing that heat. Tuesday episode. McDavid returns. That's just a mention. We'll talk about it. Thatcher Demko, he'll be back in the cage as well. Kicking off the episode that way. The Avalanche lose again. They're dropping games left and right. Alexander Georgiev, is he already gassed again, Steele? Talk a little bit about that in the meat and potatoes of the episode. New York Rangers set a franchise record with 54 wins, and on the back of one of the better seasons we've seen in a while, that no one's talking about, Artemi Panarin, going to get some love on today's show. Tuesday's bets. Over to you, my friend. You know we're bringing that 30-minute fire. You guys come in for the 30-minute hit of NHL and fantasy news with a little bit of betting cherry on top. Steele, McDavid is back, playing against the Sharks on Monday night. We're in the midst of Monday night. Don't know how that works, but something tells me that 100th assist is in the bag. So why don't we just talk about Thatcher Demko for a hot minute? He hasn't been in the cage since March the 9th. We've talked a lot about the Vancouver Canucks. Demko is 34, 13-2. He was a goalie very near and dear to your heart last year. Up and down season, and he has been sensational this year. Talk to me about what you think this means for the Vancouver Canucks before we get into the Avalanche and get into the Rangers, because the playoffs are here. So what we're trying to do on this show is focus on everything that's important for getting this playoff money, because we're wrapping the show with bets as always.
Well, I think it means everything for the Vancouver Canucks, especially for their playoff hopes moving forward. Just looking at the standings right now, they've gotten by with Casey DeSmith and their, the backup goaltender that they have currently.
I don't even know that kid's
name. Yeah, Seelovs or whatever it is. But they've gotten by. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10 games. They've gotten by without Thatcher Demko since he's been injured. And again, looking at the standings right now, it's most likely going to be Vancouver against the Nashville Predators, and we'll break down that entire playoff matchup, once we get closer to the playoffs in the next couple of days. But it means everything, because I've said this for many teams, and I've said this for all, every single postseason and for every playoffs, for every single sports league. Defense is how you win championships. Defense is where you really separate yourselves from the men, separate the men from the boys. And that's how I truly feel about a lot of this. And that's how I truly feel about Thatcher Demko's importance to this Canucks franchise and this Canucks team going into the postseason. This is a pesky, very physical team in Nashville. So if they go up against them, I'm not sure if the Vancouver Canucks have that same caliber of tenacity and physicality that the Nashville Predators can really bring. They have a few.
We're already picking apart the Canucks. I'm ready for it.
They're going to have to really depend on Thatcher Demko, because you look to the other side, they've also got UC Saros in Nashville, who has been really good the second half of the season.
True.
Thatcher Demko means everything this team, right behind, I would say, Quinn Hughes. But Thatcher Demko is right up there with the way that he's been playing this season. So, it all depends, because he's been out for the last 2 months. I know he's coming back for one last regular season game, but is that enough to feel confident going into the postseason against a team that is really jump-started in the second half of the year? I don't know. So we'll break all of it down soon, but Thatcher Demko's importance is right up there with Quinn Hughes.
What's kind of funny, Steele, is we've said this, I think, every single year we've done this podcast. Nashville Predators are a franchise that come alive in the nighttime. They come alive in the second half. That's just it. That's a little shout out to the weekend there one time. Demko, 34-13-2, 2.47 goals against, a .917 save percentage, and 5 shutouts in 49 games this season. When it comes down to this is the scenario that you have, Steele, when the playoffs are a whole different beast, the Vancouver Canucks have one of the best records in the NHL. They're sitting pretty in the Pacific Division. They've been bringing it all season long. But this is where it can come apart now when your number one goaltender, who's been on the shelf since March the 9th and gets one game of action, also has to come in against a Calgary Flames team that is scoring 5 or 6 goals seemingly every other night. So if you throw this guy in there, he gets pumped. And then you got to go up against a steady veteran presence who's been now on fire the second half in UC Saros. And you go down a game or two, perhaps. Things can start to come off the wheels very quickly, and you and I know better than most when it comes to trying to really put a finger on the playoffs. It is anybody's guess. However, you and I are going to do all of the guessing, all of the predicting, all of the previewing for everyone out there, and you know I'm hyped for the X factors, who's winning in how many games. You got it all coming at you. We got a Friday episode. We got a Saturday special. We're going to break all of it down for y'all right after the break. I want to talk about the Avalanche. I want to talk about the Rangers, Artemi Panarin, Tuesday's bets. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball's in full swing, baby. FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to dingers to slam dunks, all on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for? FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic W. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today. Locked On's NFL mock draft is live on April 17th, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, streaming on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or you can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Find the Ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL mock draft on April 17th, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, or you can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review.
Bang.
We're getting hot and heavy out here on Mondays or on Tuesday's episode.
Yes, sir.
It's hot in here in this room right now. I'm sweating up a storm, but we're ready. We're going for big-time bets at the end of the episode. The Colorado Avalanche, and of course, we'll touch on the New York Rangers and Artemi Panarin. But the Colorado Avalanche, we talked about them over the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, and we're talking about them
We've talked a little bit about the upcoming series between the Winnipeg Jets and those Avalanche.
Are you feeling about it now, Steele? How you feeling about it now?
I'll start off by saying this. As we inch closer to playoff season and we, every day gets by now,
4 days
my
away.
faith and my hope in this Avalanche team really start to dwindle down. I
Ah.
am losing a lot of hope in this team right now. And based off of what I just said about Thatcher Demko's return and, Thatcher and his importance to the team and what defense means for championships, it can be really true with what we're seeing right now with Alexander Georgiev. And even, when you get by Devin Taves and Cale Makar, I'm not sure how I feel about this blue line in Colorado right now either. And, we talked about it off air a little bit. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games. And they're losing to top tier teams in horrible fashion. 7-0 against the Jets, 7-4 against the Dallas Stars, 6-2 against Edmonton, 4-1 loss to Columbus.
Correct.
4-3 overtime loss to Vegas. These are top tier teams that they're either going to be playing or, most likely going to be playing if they somehow move past the first round. But it really falls onto Alexander Georgiev, where he just has not had a good season. And you look at the stats right now, he's tied for first. He's tied for first for most games played this season with
I think
63
he's first in
games.
wins as well, though.
Yeah, but he's played 63 games.
Yeah, no. I'm just throwing it out there.
And we talked about it yesterday. They can outscore their opponents to win games. That doesn't mean Georgiev's going to play good, and the stats prove it. He has a 3.02 goals against average with a 897 save percentage. So the stats speak for themselves. He does have the most wins in the National Hockey League. He has the most games. He's played 78% of the games for the Colorado Avalanche. And again, as we get closer to the playoffs, as we get closer, every single day. I started, last week I was at 5% for the Winnipeg Jets. I'm at about 50-50 right now. So I don't know what my decision is going to be when we break down this series, more in depth. I don't know who I'm going to be choosing, but I can tell you this, it's going 7 games. It's very interesting, Steele, because I can remember clearly, you and I have to talk about a lot of predictions and a lot of things on this show, but all the way back into, you're sweating in the cottage right now. I can remember sweating in my cottage at the end of the summer last season, talking about this very same thing. We weren't really sure about the Winnipeg Jets. You were looking at them as maybe as a bubble playoff team. I was thinking about them much higher. And now here we are uncertain about them again. And again, I kind of stuck to my guns on the Jets maybe a week ago, and I'm going to say the same thing. Connor McDavid is going to be the difference in this series. That's number one. Yeah. That's obvious. Everyone's talking about it. But shout out to Fuego1915 in the channel, dropping comments on YouTube. If you guys are out there, smash that subscribe button on YouTube. Continue to drop us whatever comments you need. 5-star review wherever you listen. But Fuego1915 says, as an Avs fan, Colorado's defense has been getting exposed. Yeah. The structure needs to be tighter, and their habit to pinch offensively is being exploited. Those things right there, Steele, when you're talking about the Winnipeg Jets, a top 10 defensive unit, and they're bringing McDavid, that's going to mean fits for the Colorado Avalanche. I really don't care how much offense and how many playoff studs and Nichushkin and otherwise that tend to step their game up at this time of year that they have. I would say Winnipeg in 6. Is that a bit of a bold prediction? Is that really my prediction? We'll save it for when we actually do that. I think that all that needs to be said here, Steele, is we are in store for, once again, after the season we had, an absolutely loaded NHL playoffs. And I am so fired up that I'm very glad I'm not sitting in that room at the cottage with you right now, because I'm pretty sure we'd blow the roof off of the old Steele Roden residence in that place. But here we go, because let's talk about the New York Rangers. I'm fired up, man, because you and I haven't talking about the New York Rangers at all. And why don't we just talk about them first before we get to Panarin? Because we can get to Panarin after the break and bets. The New York Rangers set a franchise record with 54 wins. This is a franchise that is an original 6 club. When they do things like this, and check the numbers, that means they're the best team in the NHL. And with a win right now while we're recording this, they clinched the President's Trophy. What's your take on this New York Rangers team? One that I think is an absolute nightmare to match up against if you're a first-round opponent. What's your take on their ceiling? How are you feeling? And then let's get to break and we'll talk about Artemi Panarin in fantasy. I feel great about this New York Rangers team. And it's actually funny because I was looking back at our preseason predictions of where these teams would place in their division. And I actually had the New York Rangers second behind the Carolina Hurricanes. I think we both had the Carolina Hurricanes finishing first.
And it's still a possibility that flip-flops.
Is it?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
if New York loses now as we're recording and Carolina wins on Tuesday night tonight, they will take that first spot.
So that's definitely still a possibility.
But that has to be a straight loss and a straight win. No 1 point here, no 1 point there. So it is looking like it's the Rangers President's Trophy, but it's not out of the question.
Not out of the question. And again, that's the funny thing is I had them finishing second in the Metro, but I've spoken about them over the last 2 years now, and even all throughout this season, that they are my Stanley Cup champions. They are the Stanley Cup champions that I view winning it at the end of the season. I just put $20 down on them to win the Stanley Cup. So I think I forget what their odds were at the time of that. I believe it was I think it was over plus 1,000. So I have a lot of faith in this team, and I really like the structure. I like Laviolette behind the bench. I think a lot of people, again, heading into the season, thought that Chris Kreider was going to regress. He still has a phenomenal offensive touch. Mika Zibanejad he's been okay. I thought he would be a little bit better, but the second line is the bread and butter for this New York Rangers team. Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, and I have really loved the play of Alexis Lafreniere. He has elevated his game to an unbelievable standard right now, and he's still developing. He's still progressing, and he's still under 24 years old right now. I'm loving his game and where it's at. I'm loving the physicality that he's bringing. I'm loving the playmaking. I'm loving that he's putting the puck more into better positions, putting himself in better positions. That second line is where the New York Rangers run everything through. And, a lot of them are on that top power play unit as well. So I love the top six from the Rangers, but even the bottom six and what they've done. You bring in Matt Rempe, this young kid who's 7'5", absolute giant, who brings the physicality along Keandre Miller, alongside Jacob Trouba, alongside Vincent Trocheck, along all these top guys, Barclay Goodrow, Willie Cooley. They bring in Alex Wenberg, who's been a great bottom six centerman for them as well.
Thank you.
Obviously they've lost, they bring in Jack Roslovic as well, who had a decent second half of the season for Columbus. They lose Blake Wheeler. That's why they bring in Roslovic to fill in that spot. And then you just look at the blue line. This is a very underrated blue line. Obviously
it shouldn't be, but it is, I think.
It shouldn't be, but it is. But again, when you look at them on paper, you see Braden Schneider, you see Eric Gustafsson, you see Ryan Lindgren. These are still top defensemen in the league. Maybe not offensively, but on the defensive side and physicality, they bring it very effective. They bring it every single night. And then I talked about it as well. This is exactly what the Rangers needed to have a goaltender back up Igor Shesterkin that you can have faith in. So again, knock on wood, we don't want anything to happen to Shesterkin. But if something happens, you have Jonathan Quick, three-time Stanley Cup champion, right behind, ready to go. Those are two goaltenders. You have solidified your blue line with these top guys, and then the top six, again, that second line with Trocheck, Alexis Lafreniere, and Artemi Panarin, who we'll speak on very shortly. It's been an absolutely incredible. I have them winning the Stanley Cup this season, and I have so much faith in them going into the postseason. If they let me down to the first round again, I'll lose it.
Okay, I don't see that happening this year. So I'm here to support you through those tiers if it happens, because I don't know what we're going to talk about when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs scenario, Steele. There might be some tiers in our forecast there as well. Number one, Chris Drury running this team. I like to give love to some GMs. I'm giving him some love because instead of swinging for the fences, which basically the New York Rangers have done
asking to do it again this year too.
And then he goes quiet and brings in Roslovic and Wenberg. I like it. It's switching it up. Trusting in what you have in these pieces, trusting in these young guys and Alexis Lafreniere, who has really stepped up his game. Let's just be honest as well. Mika Zibanejad's the captain. Chris Kreider is arguably the secondary captain or the unsung captain who has led the team in goal scoring. That's not the top line. Their number one line is Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. In terms of getting it done this season. And this team has done just that. You mentioned also the angle that John Quick brings. You also brought up the excellent, eloquent point of how this blue line is built. Ryan Lindgren with the talent of Adam Fox. Braden Schneider with the talent in the body of Keandre Miller. Eric Gustafsson with the talent and studliness of Jacob Trouba. They all play off each other so nicely. They're built and balanced very nicely, and that's what I mentioned about the matchups and what it all matters about in the postseason. We're going to not reinvent the wheel, but we'll keep bringing it up. Igor Shesterkin on his game, there is no goaltender better, Steele, in fantasy or in just regular eye test hockey levels. Has he struggled this year fantasy? Was he a disappointment? For sure. Was John Quick perhaps a savior for you? For sure. However, with him on his game, with this blue line doing its thing, I'm with you in terms of their ability to win the cup. I'm still going with Carolina out of the East, and I'm still going with, I'll leave the tease for the Western Conference for later in the week because maybe it's changed, Steele. I don't know. I'm getting a little crazy here, but why don't we talk about bets right after the break? And of course, Friday special, Saturday special. We'll break down all the Eastern matchups. We'll break down all the Western matchups and everything you need to know about Saturday's playoffs.
Only 7 days away, 6 days away now from the playoffs starting in the National
5 days.
League. 5 days away. We're getting down there. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. We're going to break it all down, every single matchup, X factors, bets, who we have, predictions, everything
4
you need
days.
to know. We're going to get over to big time bets very, very quickly. But this episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. We are down to the final game of the regular season, and teams are still battling for position in all 4 divisions. Regardless of where your team is in the current standings, I want to remind you all that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Not just hockey, though. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on the Sleeper app, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, Makar, McKinnon, Hellebuck, if they'll record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in a given game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and location availability. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. We'll also break down a Saturday special before the playoffs start this upcoming week. But we gotta talk about big time bets. We got to talk about the games tonight, Tuesday night. Yes, big betting boards, some juicy boards, some juicy bets out there. 8 games on the schedule. I've got 3 picks, all coming from the Eastern Conference. Oh, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with my first 2 picks and then throw it over to you. First pick of the night. And I'll get to my lock of the night last, but first,
I don't know why I'm so excited for this, but I feel like this is going to be a big night for us before the playoffs, Steele.
It's going to be a big night, hopefully.
Thank you.
First pick, Bruins, Senators over 6.5 in this matchup. Look at the numbers. They've typically gone under. I believe actually 7 of the last 10 or 8 of the last 10 have gone under the number. Okay. The last game went over. If you want to play it a little bit safer, currently the odd is over 5.5 at -130. I'm feeling an over 6.5. You're going to get plus odds. Okay. This is a back-to-back situation for both Ottawa and the Boston Bruins. So might be a little bit tired defensively, might be a little tired, especially on the Ottawa side with their goaltenders, absolute havoc, tragedy. Yeah, I'm feeling the over 6.5. You're going to get plus odds on this. But if you're feeling a little bit less, take the over 5.5 at -130. You're still getting great odds. Juicy. Second pick of the night. I'm going with a team still battling for a playoff spot. The Red Wings on the money line against the Montreal Canadiens, -152.
Yeah, I was looking at it.
It's a 60-40 split in Detroit's favor. They've won 6 out of the last 10 matchups.
Back-to-back home and home as well with Detroit and Montreal.
Like you're saying right now, it's a back-to-back situation. So I'm going to take the Red Wings on the money line on the road and with my first pick, Bruins Senators over 6.5.
I just need to get it off the chest right now. This is the toughest week, I would say, in the NHL schedule to handicap, aside from the first week and the week right after the holiday season. Those are like the 3 that are very, very hard to put a finger on, Steele. Not like the rest of the year is exactly a cakewalk. But you know what I'm getting at, because you've even seen it over the last week or so with teams that are out of it. You know, the Columbus Blue Jackets laid an absolute, like, their best game of the season on the Colorado Avalanche even a number of days ago. One more shout out and plug for Troy. But that's just what I needed to say, number 1. And I think you're looking at that with the right angle. You're taking a look at some different value spots with this last couple of days. And I think that's what you have to do, because then Saturday, it's time to bust out that pocketbook, because Steele and I are getting very, very serious. I'm not going to cuss again, Steele. That's not going to happen, but it's okay. It wasn't that serious. This is a family show. Toronto at Florida. Already we're going to have playoff implications. You know, I like to say playoff atmosphere. This one is going to have it, Steele. And immediately when I looked at these first 2 games I'm looking at, by the by, I didn't even have to look into the numbers. I went under Toronto at Florida. That was the gut pick. And in their last 10 head-to-head, 9 have gone under the number in the regular season. This one is going to have that playoff-like intensity. It's going to be Samsonov in the cage going up against his Russian counterpart in Sergei Bobrovsky. I'm going to say these two teams are going to set the tone. It's going to be nasty, and it's going to be gritty. And also, the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be having a couple of guys on the bench. Max Domi is going to miss this one. There's another player, I just saw the Toronto update. They're going to be resting a couple of guys just for maintenance. So that's telling me under. Calgary at Vancouver. I mentioned the Calgary Flames have been scoring goals lately. The over has gone over the number in 6 of their last 7 games and 7 of their last 10 against Calgary. Against Vancouver. So hit me with the over 6.5 for Calgary, Vancouver, especially with Thatcher Demko back in there for the first time in a long time, Steele. I'm not saying that means it's absolutely going to be a slap up or anything. He's going to be good for at least a couple of goals in his first game in 6 weeks. And I'll throw it over to you for your lock of the night and your response to those first 2 picks. Under in the Leafs, Florida, over in the Calgary, Vancouver game.
I'm not sure about the over.
Oh,
I'm not sure about the over, or I'm not sure about the under. I'm not sure about the under in the Panthers Maple Leafs game. I do really like the over in that Calgary Vancouver game.
I like it when you disagree.
All I know is I really hope one of those players that isn't missing this game is Austin Matthews, because my lock of the night is Austin Matthews anytime goal. He's on an 8-game goal streak right now. He's got 10 goals. Steele. Yeah, if Sheldon Keefe benches him, I'm going to fly all the way back to all the way to Florida, meet with Sheldon Keefe and slap him upside the head and tell him, what are you thinking out there?
Well, actually, and you know what? This is where I need you on the show every single day. Joseph Woll will be in the cage and not Samsonov. So I retract that statement. Not about the total, but that might play into it as well. I'm done now because Max Domi is definitely downgraded to out versus Florida.
So now I'm definitely feeling the over in the Panthers Leafs
last
game.
Side bet of the season?
Last side bet of the season, but my lock of the night, once again, Matthews anytime goal.
Love
He's on
that one.
8-game goal streak with 10 goals in that
70,
time.
baby.
Got to see 70. If he doesn't get it against Florida, you got to hammer it against the Tampa Bay Lightning, the last game of the regular season.
Oh, yeah.
Matthews anytime goal is my lock of the night.
Steele, you have to. This team has been pushing for him almost too much. You talked about that on yesterday's episode. We're not going to get there. My lock of the night, the Seattle Kraken roll into the hottest team in the NHL in the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have reeled off, I think it's 6 straight wins. Now I'm all heated and hot and heavy. I think it's 6 straight wins. 6 straight wins. And look, the Seattle Kraken, I think we can throw up into the mix of some of the biggest disappointing teams of the year. Maybe it was an overachieve last year, but, just disappointing from this club that went on a run last playoffs. And made some noise. Anyway, Winnipeg at home. They have only played 8 games in their franchise record against the Seattle Kraken. 6-2-0 for the Winnipeg Jets. 6 dubs, 2 losses. Jets money line. That's my lock of the night.
I love that pick. The best out of all 3 of yours. I love the Flames and the Canucks one, but yeah, I'm definitely feeling the over in that Panthers
side tenor.
Side tenor for sure. Last one of the regular season. We might have a few in the playoffs. We'll have to wait and see.
We better.
Thank you so much.
Or we'll save them for the golf course, Steele.
Yeah, we'll save it for the golf course. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Day's YouTube channel, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps. They are here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. So make sure you go subscribe to theirs. Subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you again so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.